In 2024, during a quiet interview room in London, one claim made phones light up within minutes. Tom Bauer said their finances were in serious trouble. Reporters paused. Screens refreshed. The stakes suddenly felt bigger than headlines, because this wasn't just about money, it was about image, contracts, and survival. If even part of this is true, everything changes. So what exactly is going wrong behind the scenes, and why hasn't it been fixed yet? The room felt quiet. Then suddenly, phones began to buzz. Reporters looked down at their screens, eyes widening, fingers moving fast. Within minutes, notebooks opened, pens rushed across paper, and one sentence started spreading everywhere. Tom Bauer had just made a strong claim. In a 2024 interview, he said Meghan's financial situation was not stable. The words were short, but the reaction was big. News outlets quickly picked it up. Headlines appeared within hours. Social media filled with posts, some shocked, some doubtful. It moved fast, faster than most interviews usually do. Tom Bauer is a biographer. A biographer is someone who writes detailed stories about real people's lives. He has written 29 books, many about famous figures. His work often creates debate because he looks closely at facts, but also includes strong opinions. That is why people paid attention when he spoke. But here's the important part. His claims were not officially confirmed. They were reported and discussed, but not proven by financial records. Still, the impact was real. When someone with his reputation says something serious, it makes people stop and listen. So why did this moment explode so quickly? It wasn't just about the words. It was about timing. Over the last few years, Meghan and Harry had signed major deals. Big contracts. Big numbers. To the public, everything looked successful and stable. But this interview suggested something different. Something hidden. And that contrast created tension. People began asking questions. If everything was going well, why would someone say the opposite? Was there something happening behind the scenes that the public could not see? But then, another detail started to matter. The story wasn't really about one interview. It was about everything that came before it. The real answer wasn't in the interview, it was in what had been building for years. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Headlines popped up on screens within minutes, and people paused, reading the same big numbers again and again. It all looked powerful. It all looked secure. Between 2020 and 2021, after stepping back from royal duties, Meghan and Harry signed major deals with large media companies. These included Netflix and Spotify, two of the biggest platforms in the world. Reports said the deals could be worth tens of millions of dollars. For many watching, this meant one thing: financial success. But here's where it gets important. A deal is not always simple money in the bank. A contract is an agreement. It often includes rules. Payments can be spread out over time. They depend on work being completed. They depend on results. If content is delayed, or if it does not perform well, the money may not come in fully. At first, things looked smooth. Projects were announced. A documentary series was released on Netflix. A podcast appeared on Spotify. The public stayed interested. But then, small cracks began to show. In 2023, reports said the Spotify deal ended earlier than expected. That raised questions. Why end early? Was it mutual? Was it planned? Or was something not working behind the scenes? There was no full official explanation, only reported details and speculation. And that's where the picture becomes more complex. The public saw big headline numbers. But the real income may have depended on performance. That means success was not guaranteed. It had to be earned step by step. So the image of steady wealth may not match the reality of how money actually flows. But then, here's the twist. If the deals were not as stable as they looked, what does that mean for everything else? And that detail changes what happens next. Lights flickered outside the tall gates in Montecito. A car slowed down. Inside, someone paused, looking at numbers on a screen. The silence felt heavy, like every small detail suddenly mattered. Living a global life is not cheap. It looks calm on the outside, but behind it, the costs keep moving every single month. In 2020, Meghan and Harry bought a large home in Montecito, California. Reports placed its value at around $14 million. A house like that is not just a one-time cost. There are property taxes, maintenance, staff, and security. These are ongoing expenses, money that must be paid again and again. Security alone can be very expensive. High-profile people often need trained protection teams. Some reports suggest this can cost millions per year, depending on risk. Then there are travel costs, brand teams, legal advisors, and daily operations. Each part adds another layer. Here's a simple way to understand it. Income is the money coming in. Expenses are the money going out. For stability, income must stay higher than expenses. If income slows down, but expenses stay the same, pressure starts to build. And that's where questions begin. Publicly, everything may look successful. The house, the lifestyle, the visibility, it all shows strength. But privately, the balance may be more complex. Some analysts have suggested that keeping this level of lifestyle requires a steady and strong income flow. But then, what happens if that flow becomes uncertain? If deals depend on performance, and performance is not always guaranteed, the gap between income and spending can grow. Not suddenly, but slowly, over time. This does not mean collapse. It means pressure. And pressure can build quietly. So the real issue may not be how much they have, but how stable that amount is over time. But here's the deeper concern. If expenses stay high, and income becomes unpredictable, how long can that balance last? Because the next move doesn't happen in public. Cameras clicked in sharp bursts. A short silence followed each question. Then a careful answer came, slow and measured, as millions watched. In that moment, every word mattered, and every reaction came fast. In 2021, the interview with Oprah Winfrey became one of the most watched media events of the year. It brought global attention. It increased visibility. And it changed how people saw Meghan and Harry. For many, it built sympathy. For others, it raised doubts. The reaction was strong, but also divided. This is where media strategy comes in. Strategy means a plan. A plan to control how the public sees you. Media appearances, documentaries, and podcasts all play a role in building that image. At first, this strategy worked. The Netflix series released in 2022 gained attention. The podcast on Spotify also created discussion. But then, something began to shift. Over time, public reactions became mixed. Some polls and reports suggested that audience interest was no longer as strong as before. Some viewers felt they had already heard the story. Others wanted something new. And this matters more than it seems. Media value depends on attention. If people stop watching, listening, or caring, the value of future deals can drop. Companies look at numbers, views, engagement, reactions. If those numbers go down, confidence goes down too. But here's the twist. More exposure does not always mean more success. Sometimes, too much exposure can reduce impact. What once felt powerful may start to feel repeated. So the question becomes deeper. Is the media strategy still helping build their brand, or slowly adding pressure to keep performing again and again? And if pressure keeps growing, it may affect future opportunities. But then, something even more important begins to form. Because this is no longer just about attention, it's about value. But the story doesn't end there. This is where it turns. The room went still. A soft click echoed as a screen refreshed. Someone leaned closer, eyes fixed on one number that suddenly didn't match the story everyone believed. This is where everything changes. Big reveal. The real pressure may not come from spending alone. It comes from a gap between expected income and actual delivered income. Here's what that means in simple terms. Many media deals are not paid all at once. They are structured in stages. Structured means built in steps. Money comes in parts, after work is completed, after shows are released, and after results are measured.
For example, a reported $100 million deal does not mean $100 million arrives immediately. It may be spread over years. It may depend on how well the content performs. If a project is delayed, the payment may also be delayed. If performance is weaker than expected, some payments may change. Now think about that with real numbers. The Netflix deal, reported in 2020, was linked to multiple projects. The Spotify deal, signed around the same time, ended in 2023 earlier than expected, according to reports. That means one stream of expected income may have stopped sooner than planned. But expenses, like the Montecito home, security, and staff, did not stop. This creates a gap. Income becomes uncertain. Expenses stay fixed. And that gap is where pressure begins. Some analysts have suggested this is the real issue behind recent claims. Not a sudden disaster, but a slow imbalance. Again, this is based on reported and alleged insights, not confirmed financial records. But the pattern is clear enough to understand. High expectations were set. Big numbers were shared publicly. But behind the scenes, actual income depends on delivery, timing, and performance. And if those do not align perfectly, the difference grows. But then here's the hidden part most people miss. This gap is not always visible from the outside. The public still sees success. The image remains strong. But the structure underneath may be more fragile than it looks. So the question becomes sharper now. If income depends on future success, what happens if that success slows down? And more importantly, can it recover in time? And that's where the real trap is hidden. Voices dropped to whispers. Screens glowed late at night. Somewhere, decisions were being made quietly, far from cameras and headlines. The pressure was no longer just about money, it was about trust. Reputation means how people see you. It sounds simple, but it controls a lot. In media careers, reputation can decide who gets deals, who gets dropped, and who gets a second chance. Big companies like Netflix or other streaming platforms do not just look at fame. They study numbers. They check views, likes, audience reactions, and long-term interest. If people are watching and supporting, deals grow. If interest drops, deals can shrink or stop. Over time, media coverage around Meghan and Harry has become mixed. Some reports show strong support. Others highlight criticism. Polls in different countries have shown changing opinions. This does not mean failure, but it does mean uncertainty. And uncertainty is risky. For companies, risk means possible loss. If a brand is not stable, it becomes harder to invest large amounts of money. Contracts may become shorter. Payments may depend even more on performance. Expectations may become stricter. But then, here's the twist. Reputation is not fixed. It can change. A strong project can rebuild trust. A successful show can bring audiences back. One powerful moment can shift public opinion again. But rebuilding takes time, and time costs money. So while income depends on performance, performance now depends on reputation. And reputation depends on public reaction. It's all connected. That creates a cycle. If one part weakens, the others feel it too. But here's the deeper layer most people don't see. Many of these decisions happen in private. Meetings, negotiations, contract talks, they are not shown to the public. We only see the results later.
So the real answer may not be in headlines or comments. It may already be decided behind closed doors. And that leads to the biggest question so far. Can they rebuild strong public trust fast enough to stabilize future income? Or has the shift already gone too far? The real answer wasn't in public opinion, it was in private decisions. The clock ticked softly on the wall. No new announcement came. No big deal was confirmed. But behind that silence, time kept moving, and with it, pressure kept growing. In media careers, momentum is everything. Momentum means forward movement. If projects keep coming, attention stays high. If projects slow down, attention can fade. And when attention fades, opportunities often follow. Right now, the situation looks uncertain. Some past deals have ended or changed, like the Spotify partnership in 2023, according to reports. Others, like Netflix, still exist, but future projects must perform well to keep value strong. That is how these contracts work. They depend on results. But then, here's the problem. If nothing changes, no new hit projects, no shift in strategy, the pattern may continue. Income could become less predictable. New deals may come with stricter rules. Payments may be tied more closely to performance than before. Experts have reported that this is common in the entertainment industry. When public interest becomes mixed, companies become careful. They invest less upfront. They wait for proof before committing more. That means the pressure does not disappear, it increases slowly. But there is another side to this. Change is still possible. They could try a new direction, different content, a fresh approach, something that reconnects with audiences in a stronger way. Many public figures have done this before. They adapt and they recover. But here's the catch. Change takes time. And during that time, expenses continue. The Montecito home, security costs, staff, all remain in place. So the real risk is not just about money. It's about timing. Can a new strategy work fast enough? Or will the delay make recovery harder? And then, one more question rises. Are they already planning something major behind the scenes right now? Because if they are, we may not see it until it is ready. Because the next move doesn't happen in public. The noise of social media finally slowed. Headlines flashed and faded. The public's attention moved on. But now, after all the claims and debates, a clearer picture begins to form. The reality is not a sudden financial disaster. There is no confirmed collapse. Instead, reports and analyses suggest a more complex situation. The tension comes from structure, timing, and expectations. Income depends on project performance. Expenses remain constant. Reputation influences future deals. Each factor connects to the others, forming a delicate balance. The Netflix and Spotify deals brought attention and opportunity, but not all promised income is guaranteed. Payments are released based on results, and some reported projects ended early or performed differently than expected. Security, property, staff, and travel costs continue regardless. That gap, the difference between income and ongoing expenses, is where most pressure originates. In simple terms, money is coming in, but it may not always match what is being spent, and that difference can create stress. High expectations meet uncertain delivery, creating tension behind the public image of success. Yet, the situation is recoverable. Strategic projects, careful media appearances, and rebuilding reputation can stabilize income again. The picture is not hopeless. It is challenging, but manageable. So, the claims in the interview were not entirely false, but they were incomplete. The story behind the headlines is about careful balance, private planning, and ongoing challenges, not immediate disaster. Will their next move solve the problem, or make it harder to recover? And that final decision will define what happens next. What do you think? Are Meghan and Harry's finances really unstable, or is it just misunderstood? Do you believe media deals are still the best way for them to earn money? If you were managing their brand, what would you do differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your opinions. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep, simple breakdowns of complex stories, explained in a way anyone can understand.